Hey everybody, welcome to this week's STEMpump Camp. My name is Ritesh, and in this camp we're going to be building a shop using Next.js and Tailwind CSS. This is a completely beginner camp, and we're going to kind of touch on a bunch of different small things around Next.js and Tailwind. Before we get started, I'll kind of go over what both these things are, and then we'll just go straight into it. So Next.js is a React framework. And React is another JavaScript framework that allows us to write, front-end applications. So it's not really back-end, which is more of, servers and databases and such. But this allows us what we see and how we interact with the back-end. So this is kind of a front-end framework. It has a ton of different things. It's used by loads of different companies. Even STEMpump, we use it to program our sites and everything. Even Camps runs off of it. So it's really, really cool. And then we have Tailwind CSS, which allows us to style HTML, which is hypertext markup language, which is a lot. But it allows us to turn, general code like this into things that look really good and are styled really well. We also use this at STEMpump. And so in today's camp, we're going to kind of be talking about HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript to get started. And create just a super simple shop using all these things, and you'll be able to kind of make your own sites from then. We have another camp where we made a blog, and that one we kind of went over the deployment process, so how to make a domain name with it, and get it sent out onto the actual web. In this camp, we're going to stick to our local computers. We're also going to be looking a little bit at Google Fonts, and having some dummy data, I guess, and fake data to power our site. So this is kind of our back-end element. And with that said, we can kind of go straight into it. You'll find links to everything at the top here, as well as more on your right sidebar. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just click on the link in the description and it'll pop up, and you can see all the links and resources available. All right. I also recommend having Visual Studio Code installed, or another IDE, which stands for Integrated Developer Environment. Like I said, this is meant to be beginner, but a few things hopefully you already know, and we already have another camp to kind of go through that. All right, so let's get started. Before we actually get started, though, make sure you have Node.js installed. This kind of it's runtime needed for your computer. To do all this React stuff, and you can just download 16.15.1 at nodejs.org, and I'll also have that linked. So just download that, and you can kind of come back to here when you have it finished. If you already have it finished, let's go straight into it. Let's press Get Started, and we're going to go to Framework Guides and click on Next.js. And so now we're going to open up Terminal, and we're going to write CD. I'm going to do mine to desktop. You can do it to your documents, your downloads, whatever. And then I'm going to copy everything here. And we're basically going to write npx create-next-app. And then we're going to name it my-shop. You're going to hit enter and then type in Y to proceed. And it's going to install a bunch of things. There we go. Cool. And so now that that's done, we can close our terminal and open up Visual Studio Code. So I already have Visual Studio Code opened. I'm going to open it up. So go to my desktop, my shop, trust. Yes. Okay. And cool. So we will see this screen. Click Control and then the little squiggly underneath the escape key, and you're going to see a terminal pop up. You can also go to Terminal, New Terminal, or that's a super easy way to do it. Just hit New Terminal, or View and Terminal. And it's here that we're going to, let me see if I can zoom that, make it bigger. Okay, yeah, that's bigger. We're going to continue some of our stuff. So Tailwind wants us to install Tailwind now. So with this command right here that we already ran, we installed Next.js and React and all those fun things, which you can kind of see here in your package.json. You can see Next, React, and our React DOM. That's about it. We don't really need anything else right now. Go back here and copy this entire line and we're going to paste it. So npm install-d Tailwind CSS post CSS auto prefixer, and these are 3 different packages and dependencies, and you'll see that they just got added all to dev because we did the -d. Then we're going to run this line of code, npx tailwind css init-p, and this is our tailwind.config.js file. Here we'll be able to configure Tailwind settings, and we won't really do much of that today, but it's super important to just have. So like I said, we're going to copy this content thing right here that's highlighted and replace this line here. This will tell it where to look for Tailwind. So in these 2 folders, pages, we haven't created components yet. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go into styles. We're going to right click on home module.css and hit delete. We're going to hit move to trash. We're going to open up globals.css and delete everything in here. And then we're going to copy in these 3 lines at Tailwind base, at Tailwind components, and at Tailwind utilities. Then we're going to click on our pages folder. We're going to delete the API folder. We don't need that. Move to trash. We're going to double click the index.js folder and replace it with the following code. Export default function home, return, and then this h1 that they've kind of highlighted here. Then in our terminal here, we're going to write add a few more commands. We're going to write npm I at hero icons/react, and we can actually see it got added. And we're also going to write npm I-d at tailwind css/line clamp, and you'll see that that also got added here. In our tailwind .config file, we're going to write require at, and then in quotes, at tailwind line clamp. We're going to need this. Essentially, a line clamp will allow us to force the amount of lines we want to show for text. All right, so we're done with this. Cool, and this is kind of what we're set with. We can close out of package.json. And now to initialize our site, we're going to write npm run dev. And you'll see that now it started a little server locally on this URL. I already have this open. I'll reload the page, and you can now see hello world. I'll make it bigger. Right here at the top. And this is right here. We can actually change this, maybe say, welcome to my shop. And you'll see that it updates in real time as long as you keep saving it. You'll see that when I edit it, there's a little dot that pops up there and there. And when I hit Command S, this one doesn't go away because obviously it doesn't, not related. But you'll see that the dot up. You'll see that there's a dot right here when we edit something. This means that the file has changes and is unsaved. You'll see one unsaved. When I hit Command S or Control S if you're on Windows, or you can just click File Save, you'll see that that goes away and it updates. So if I rename this back to, Hello World, it won't update here until I save it. So just always keep saving. I always have my hand on Command S. Otherwise, when I'm typing my code. A big thing about how we're going to do today is using the Tailwind website and their quick search button right here. It allows us to search for things that we want, and it'll give us examples and directions on how to implement that with our website. I'll also be explaining a few things here directly without going back and forth, just to make things easier. And I'll add this site. Let me just grab that. I'm going to add it to the side so we can edit and see what we're doing in real time here. I'm going to close this folder. I'm also going to just minimize that. I'll make it a little bit smaller. Cool. So now we can kind of see our code and website next to each other. So I'll kind of debunk what's going on right here. So export means that we want to kind of show it. We want to get something out of here. We're in the pages folder. Everything in the pages folder will show up as a page on our website. Everything in styles will be how we, style things. So colors, shapes, whatever, shadows, borders We won't really be touching this today because of how Tailwind is written. Public is like files and images and things that we want people to be able to access, whereas these will kind of be parsed and changed up as we kind of export it later. We don't have to worry about these. These store all of the things that allow React, Next.js, Tailwind to all happen. And we've already kind of talked about a little bit of what these are. But let's kind of debunk a few things. So we have, I'll fold this back over. Export, we have default, which means it's the only and main export of the file, because you could have multiple exports in a file, and we'll have that in a little bit, but this just allows the code to know, cool, there's only one export. Function is kind of in JavaScript, it allows the code to happen. You can replicate them, use them, execute them, whatever. Export default function in the pages folder means that this is what's going to be shown on the web page. Whatever this is named doesn't matter. And return is what actually is shown. So in this case, it's an H1. We have class name, and with classes, we're able to actually add Tailwind classes. And that is what CSS is. And CSS will write pure styles. So I might write style, color, and then this is the hex code for red. And you'll see it turns red. But in Tailwind, instead of doing that, we can write text red 500. And it does it for us in less code, and we can chain a lot of these together. So you'll see underline, underlined, font, bold. If I remove this, it's thin. 3 extra large, you can go 2 extra large, large, medium, base. I don't think there's a medium for text size. Small, and extra small. So you can go a long ways with that. I'll go back to 3XL. And we can, change this to blue, and it changes colors. So we're able to do a lot of cool things with this. For now, let's kind of break it down and start working on building out our page. So I'm going to delete this, and we're going to write, this is a tag, so we're going to have an open and a close, I guess, sideways arrow, chevron, whatever you want to call it. The name is linking me right now, but we're going to write div, which is kind of a general tag. The other one was H1, which stands for heading 1. It's the highest level of heading, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. We're going to write class name, and we're going to set a max width of 3XL, which means that we can't go bigger than whatever 3XL is. We can actually go here and type max width, and you'll see there's a ton of different max widths that you can choose. We're going to do max width of 3XL, which means that when your screen is really big, the max it can go is 3XL, and if your screen's really small, that it can still stretch within. We're going to do MX auto to center it, so margin of X, so horizontal, so left and right, auto. We're going to add padding Y, so margin is outside, padding is inside. That's the super easy way to go about it. We're going to add padding Y, so top and bottom of 8. 8 is a unit relative to Tailwind, whereas these are the rem and px, so px being pixels and rem being a CSS unit. We're going to px of 4. This is basically to make sure that when you're on a small screen, the text doesn't stick to the edges and there's a little bit of a gap. And we're going to write space y of 8. So inside the div, because we can add items inside divs. You can't really do that with H1s other than text. Inside of here, all the items will be 8 away. So there's a lot of weird calculation stuff there, but that's all we really have to focus on right now. I can't save, and nothing really shows up. I can actually add a background, so BG red 500, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. If I resize this, rip the edge, you'll see that the size doesn't change because it's max of 3XL, but if I go really small, you'll see that it does change. That's really helpful for small devices. So I just wanted to highlight that with the background. We're not going to go red. All right. Now let's add a cool little header to this, to kind of show off that this is our site. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add div. You can nest lots of divs. class name, we're going to use flex, and flex allows us to align things horizontally or vertically, in this case horizontally, and we can align them across a ton of different means. So I'll do flex, justify between, which means that it will have enough space between items, and then items center, which means that it'll be vertically centered. And then I'm going to add a center. I'm going to add a space x of 8, so if we get really small, they don't stick to each other, the elements. Let me add some of these around them, and you can hit Command S. I have a thing installed that formats it for me. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a div, another div. I'm going to write h1. I'm going to write welcome to my shop, and you'll see that that pops up right there. And then if I add another, div right here that says, also let's do h2 maybe because it's less priority. We can say this is my shop. You'll see that there's a lot of space between these items, and that's what we get with justify between. And item center, make sure there's vertically centered. If I did items end, right now it doesn't matter because of the same height, but say I duplicate this, you now see that it's aligned to the bottom, center, center, and then start. So when we're just dealing with flex, start means top, center means middle, and bottom means bottom. And bottom end means bottom, sorry. And then if I even add, if I duplicate this, you'll see that we still get a lot of just distribution between everything. So I'll just delete this. I'll keep it to center. And so what I'm planning to do is I'll have maybe text on the side here and like a menu of sorts on this side. But first, let's finish up this little signage. Let's add a class name, and we're going to do font semi-bold, and set the text to 5XL. I don't like how big this is for this. I like this part being that big, but I don't really like this part being that big. So inside of this, I'm going to write span, which is another tag, and I'll write welcome to, and then I'm going to add BR right here, which stands for break, and it separates them to 2 lines. Inside of this span, I'm going to add a class name, and I'm going to set the text to LG, to large, and make it a little bit smaller, so it looks a lot nicer. And then also delete that. Welcome to my shop. Cool, so that's one thing done. The next is creating this cool little menu of ours. So this div, I'm going to start styling and write class name, flex, that's going to be another flex. We're going to do justify end, so it's aligned to the right. We're going to do item center to center them vertically. We're going to add a space of 2 between each item horizontally. We're going to set the background to gray 100. You're not seeing updates because I haven't saved it. We're going to add a padding of 2 all the way around. And we're going to do rounded full, which gives it basically a almost circular rounding. And I'll do that, and you'll see that it now kind of looks like a big pill. And that's what we really want out of this. Now I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to add some icons. So you remember that we installed hero icons, and that's a really awesome collection of icons from the same guys who made Tailwind CSS. So I'm just going to write user icon, class name. We're going to set it a width of 6 and a height of 6. And I'll save it, and you'll say it's not defined. Sometimes it'll auto find it, other times it won't. So I'm going to write import. I'm going to add some curly braces. I'm going to write user icon from at hero icons react /outline. And you'll now see that we have our icon here. Now it should be able to auto detect things, and I'll add a shopping cart icon. And I'll also add a menu icon. Class name 6, height 6. Cool. Now, I want them to kind of interact when I press and hover on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap these all in their own divs. For now, I'm just going to do the first one. We're going to add a class name to it. And in this class name, I'm going to make it rounded full. I'm going to give it a height and width of 10. You'll see that now it's kind of big. It's also going to be another flex. We're going to do item center and justify center, so it's kind of in the center once again. And we're going to write cursor pointer, so when I hover over it, my cursor changes. Now, we don't actually get an indication that we're hovering over it other than the cursor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add hover :bg gray 200. And you now see when I hover over it, there's a little bit of a color change in the background. And I can actually indicate that I'm hovering over it. I also want it to kind of have a little more smooth. So I can write transition colors, and you'll now see that there's a little bit of a slight animation between that transition from no background to background. I want to add this to these two icons, these other two right here, but I also don't want to have this much code being reused. So what I can do is I'll go beneath and write function. You'll see that I don't have an export or a default because I don't want it to be the page. And I'm going to call it nav icon, and I'm going to write children. All right, return. Cool. I'm going to copy all this code right here and paste it inside. And you'll see that nothing kind of errors out. Now, if I go right here and write nav icon, you'll see that we get another icon. It's the exact same because this code is now here. Everything we put inside this return will be replaced here. Now, you might be wondering about this children, and the reason we add this children is so we can make this tag kind of work like a div did in the past. So I'll replace this user icon with curly braces children, and you'll see that it lights up. Then you'll see that the icon disappeared here. Because now what it wants us to do is, instead of writing all this code, we can now just write nav icon and nav icon, and it applies. So I can actually just do the same thing. I just gotta wrap all these icons in nav icon functions, and you'll see that now we have this much code being applied to all of these items. All right, and just like that, we've created a super basic nav bar. And we're going to keep on coding this page out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to copy all this code. I'm going to copy it and remove it. I'm going to write nav bar. We haven't really created it yet. See, it says isn't defined because it doesn't exist. And I'm going to write nav bar and paste that in. Now, I didn't add this children or the curly braces here because I don't really need it to. It just kind of exists on its own. Now with that, we can keep on moving forward. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick sidebar and add some fonts. So I'm actually going to open this Explorer back up, and we're going to click on this icon right here and create a new folder. Not there, sorry. Click on the outside right here, and then click on folder with the plus, and we're going to call it components. And we're going to create some components. And components allow us to reuse these functions across the entire site that we build. We're going to create 3 components right now. Or just two components right now. We're going to call it index.js, container.js. Container is going to be kind of the main shaping of how we want our site to be built. So this is our container right here. I'm going to copy this code, go into container and write export default function container children turn, and then I'm going to replace navbar with children. So that's one step. We're not going to really mess here, but if you'll see, I can replace this with container, and everything stays the same. But you'll also see that we imported container from the file directory. The 2 dots back in the slash means that we're going back a folder. So we're going to leave the pages folder, go into the components folder, and find the container file. We don't really need to add the .js part to it. All right, and then in index, what we're going to do is we're going to write export default function index. We're going to write title, comma, children, return. We're going to write div, and we're going to write head, and then what we're going to do is we're going to import head from next/head, which is their optimized version, and head kind of contains all of these external file imports and whatnot. Right now we're going to write title, and we're going to call it my shop. What we're also going to do is we're going to add container right below it. So you'll see / means within the same folder. And then we're going to add children. If I go back to the index.js file and I replace this with index, you'll see that the import. You'll now see that the title of our page actually changed to my shop. And if I go into this capital index.js folder and I change it, not folder, file, and I change it, it updates. But we also have this title variable here. I'm going to add curly braces, write title, question mark, title, colon, quote, my shop. We're not going to really talk about why this means for now. Just know that if title doesn't exist, it will result in my shop, and if it does exist, we'll tell it what it means. Title is this variable, not this tag. Now, let's add a custom font, because you guys might not be seeing this if you're on a different computer. That isn't a Mac, and we want to kind of make everything standardized. Go to Google Fonts, and we're going to search for a font called Inter by Rasmus Anderson. And here we'll see the font that we want. Select regular 400, medium 500, semi-bold 600, and bold 700. Then click on the View Selected Families icon at the top, and then just copy this Use on the Web block right here, and then paste that below here. We're going to get a few errors. We're going to add a backslash right here, and then another backslash back there. We're going to add a capital O and set it equal to true. Here in the head, we can actually import external images for our site, our fonts, and so we're going to import a font from the Google Fonts website. Now, we're not using our font yet, so we need to go into Tailwind and tell it to. We're going to click on tailwind.config.js. I'm going to close my Explorer up. You can delete this top line, and we're going to write constant default theme equals require Tailwind CSS / default theme, and then theme extend, which allows us to add, not replace. In Tailwind, we're going to font family, we're going to add the curly braces. All right, sans, which is the default font used, colon, add some square braces, and write inter, comma, default theme font family sans. If you hit save, you'll see that there was a really quick change here. And so what this means is we're going to add inter, and then the rest of this variable, it's going to add it alongside it, so afterwards. So now we're using a new font. Everyone should kind of look the same. All right, let's go back here and let's add some options for our users to shop with. All right, I'm going to add a HR, which stands for hairline. Then I'm going to add a div, class name, space, y4. We're going to add h3, class name. We're going to call it text Excel font semi-bold, so it's extra large text. We're going to call it view categories. You'll see that pops up. Then we're going to write div, class name flex, justify start to start it on the left, items center, space x4, overflow x scroll, and then we're going to write snap x. Okay, that's all we're going to add for now. Then below that, we're going to add another div, class space y4. Pretty similar. We can just copy this view categories button, or not button, text over, and write featured products. And then we're going to write div class, and we're using a new called grid. So grid, we're going to write grid cols 1, md grid cols 3, grid cols, or grid rows for gap 4. Okay, let's explain what this means. We're going to use a grid. A grid compared to Flex allows us to set up rows and columns. You can go back to Tailwind, and we can actually kind of scroll down to find where the grid stuff is, or you can just search it, which I will. Grid. And we can set up grids like this. So we're going to set up a grid that is 3 columns wide and 4 rows tall. The rows really doesn't matter because we'll have enough items that'll keep on going. But the MD means for medium. And in Tailwind, we can set different styles for different sizes of screens. So when we're on a phone, maybe we only want 1 item per row. So it'll take up 1 column, which is we'll only have 1 column, so the whole way through. Whereas on medium or larger, we'll have 3 items shown per row. And then a gap of 4 means on the X and Y direction, so horizontal and vertical around an object, you'll have a gap of 4. All right, so we have this. Let's create a product type pill. So we're gonna write product type pill. Doesn't exist. Scroll to the bottom. Function product type pill. Return. We're gonna write div and then div class flex justify start items center space x 2 px4 py2 bg gray 100 rounded full. Let's save. You'll see a really tiny gray pill right there. Inside of it, we're going to add a puzzle icon with a class name of a width and height of 5. So you'll see now we have a little puzzle icon. And then a span of technology. So it looks like this. We can duplicate this maybe 9 times or just a lot of times. And you'll see that it gets cut. But now what you see, if we can actually scroll along this, you can scroll on a scroll wheel along that. And you'll see that we have this scroll wheel right here that we can now drag between all of our items. And that's what we did here. We added overflow x scroll in order to make sure that if it went past, if it overflowed past our web page, that it would turn into a scrolling element so we can continue to get all our content. Let's continue styling this by adding font semi-bold. And also by writing snap start. This way, if I scroll halfway between item, it now snaps to the nearest item. So you can always have the first item always look clean. And then when I hover on it, I want it to kind of indicate that it's a button. So I'll add cursor pointer and write hover, and we'll do brightness 75. So now you'll see when I hover over, it darkens. And then we'll write transition all, because brightness doesn't really fall under those. And then you'll see that now that when we hover over it, there's a little bit of an animation. Cool. Now go back to this Explorer, and in components we're going to create a new file. We're going to call it global.js. And right now we're going to write some data for this in order for us to kind of use it across the app in more than one place. So we're going to write export, not export default, just export, let products equal square brackets, curly braces, name, technology, comma, slug technology, comma, background, BG blue -500. And it's with this that we're now able to kind of send real data into here instead of having the same thing appear over and over again. Here we're going to curly braces and write data, and we're going to change this to data.name. It's going to complain it doesn't know what data.name is because it wasn't really fed it. We're going to remove all of these, and then I'm going to delete all of them, and we're going to write curly braces. We're going to write products, and you'll see that it imports now, but it'll have curly braces because it's not a default. We're going to write .map, parentheses, p, comma, index, equal sign, arrow, and then we're going to write product type pill, data, p, And you'll now see that we're feeding P in from products. So P is just an individual item here. So this is a single object. So this is our P value. It's sent in here. We don't really need index, but we'll just add it as a key so it just knows, so it doesn't get angry. Sometimes it does. And now when we go to this component down here, what's now P becomes data. It's just a rename, and we'll look for data.name. If I wrote data.background, you'll get what its background is, or data.slug, what its slug is. A slug is really just a web-friendly name for the URL of what something is. All right, we can go back to global.js and add a few more. Name shirts, slug shirts, background, PG green 500. In fact, I am very lazy, so I'm going to copy the rest in. Cool, and there they are. I'm going to pause really quickly so you can look at them and type them in. So pause. All right, cool. Hopefully you have those typed in. So now we have all of our items here. We can close this, we won't need it. Now let's focus on getting some data in for our site, from our dummy data. We can go back here to dummy.json.com and scroll down, and we can actually see, click on this /products button, and this is all of our data. It looks like a ton of just gibberish, but don't worry, we will decode it. All you need to remember is this URL, dummyjson.com/products. All right, we're gonna go back. Right beneath our export default function, we'll write export async function, or async, get server side props. We won't be really talking about data a lot today because it's not really the point of today's camp, but it's still good to kind of understand what we're doing. We're gonna write constant data is equal to await, because it's when you have async, you need await. Fetch to fetch us data from the website, dummyjson.com/products. All right, .then. It's gonna get what the result of this is as res, or the response, and write the little equal sign arrow, res.json, save, and now data is equal to res.json. And we'll write return props data. Cool. I can go back to this home area and write data. And now if I actually just write, we're gonna go to the bottom here, we're at a p tag or a paragraph tag. We're gonna add curly braces, json.stringify data. You'll now see that we have all this data to work with. All right. What I'm first going to do is we're actually going to go into here. We're going to add a curly brace. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to write data. And in data, we actually have a products array. Array is a list of objects, kind of similar to what we created before. We're going to write data.products.map. We can do the same thing. So p index p, and there's a lot of p's things here. And we'll write p.title. And this is all the titles of our products. I'm actually going to go here, and I'm going to rename this to product types, TT. Let's rename it to make it easier on us. And now this is all of our products that we were given from our dummy data. So I have all the things written on the side, so you don't really have to think about all this too much. All right, so let's kind of make it look nicer. Let's go to Explorer. We're going to go to Components, create a new file. We're going to call it featured item.js, or I'll call it product item. Export default product item. Where you want data flowing into it, so I'll write data. You can really use whatever you want. We're going to write return. We're going to add a function. We're going to class name. P4 equals before, BG gray 100, and then inside of here, I'm going to add a h5 tag with data.title. I'm going to do this for now. We're going to go here. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to write product item data p. Cool. And just so we can kind of see things as we style them. We're going to set it rounded 3XL. We're going to add a group tag, which basically kind of tells everything underneath it to be as a group. We're going to add cursor pointer, space y of 4. When we hover, we want to change the brightness to 75. And then we want transition all. I'll close this up so you can kind of see better. Now if I hover, you'll see that we have a lot of this interaction. Inside of it, we want to show an image. So we're going to use the image tag, img source data.thumbnail, class name. If I hit, you'll see we have all these images of different sizes. Some of them are really, really big. Some of them are really, really long. For the sake of the dummy data, we're going to set them each to a width and height of 72. We're going to add a border them, and we're going to round them to XL. So they all kind of just look uniform now. We're going to create a div. We're going to create two divs. We're going to nest them. We're going to paste this h5 inside of it. The outside one is going to be a flex. It's going to have a center, and then we're going to have between, and add a space x of 4. Here we're going to kind of add a paragraph tag with the price, data.price, add a $sign on the outside. Because this is text that we've added, this data text will be in the curly braces. The h5 will be a font semi-bold with text that's large, as well as a line clamp of 1. If I remove that line clamp of 1, if we get really, really small, you'll see that in some instances, it doesn't really like being like that. So we just add a line clamp of 1 to make it easier and nicer. If things are really, really long, like this HP Pavilion, for example, if I hit save, now it's really, really long. We add the line clamp of 1 to make sure it stays the right line amount. We're going to add class name, we're going to add text gray 500, and we're going to make it small text. Okay, after this div, we're going to add an arrow sm right icon. Let's make class name, width of 6, height of 6. And you'll see that now it's there. And then we're going to add group hover, which is different than normal hover. Normal hover applies only to the item when you hover over that, whereas a group hover requires it to follow the group. We don't really use a group hover on the top one because it is the group itself. Translate x1, so it'll move along the x-axis 1, and we're going to write transition transform because we know that this one exists. And now when I hover, you'll see that the little icon changes. And I'm also going to add flex shrink 0 to make sure that it always stays the right size. All right, cool. So just like that, we have finished our main page. And everything else from here becomes super, super easy. So in our index file, what we're going to do is we're going to actually do some consolidation. I'm going to move the nav bar into it. So the nav bar and the nav icon will be moved into our capital I index. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of set it up like this. So inside our container, on top of it, we're going to have a nav bar. It's going to be an HR. And then we're going to have an HR at the end. It's going to ask for some icons, so import user icon, shopping cart icon, and menu icon. You can save it, and now we have 2 of the same. I'm going to hit save, and it'll say, oh no, you don't have a nav bar because we don't really need it. We're going to remove the HR as well. And so this is what our page now looks like. We can remove all these extra icons from here. And then I'm also going to add a footer at the bottom just to kind of make it a little bit more official. We're going to create a function here. We're going to call it footer. Return be a footer tag. And then inside of it, it's just going to be a small tag. And it's going to say copyright my shop 2022. I'll add the footer right here. I want to make it, we're going to give it a text color of gray 500. Now, what we did right here will save us a lot of time when it comes to building our other pages out. It just might not seem like it for now. Let's also do few more things like adding links. So we're going to go to productitem.js and we're going to import link. Then what we're going to do is we're going to write link href, and instead of quotes, we're going to add curly braces with these backticks, and we'll write /product $ curly braces data.id, and we're going to kind of wrap it in this. And this will allow us to, when we click on it, to go us this web page. Right now we haven't created it yet. We're going to do the same thing on this page. We're going to go prototype pill. We're going to write link href $$ data.slug. And then I'm going to import link. And if I click on this, you'll see /technology. All right, now let's create our category, I guess, first. All right, we're going to go to our Explorer. We're going to create another file in our pages. We're going to call it square bracket category.js. And we're going to write export default function category. This is going to be really fast. Category, return, index, all right, title, we're just going to call it category for now. And if I hit save, we can click on technology/category and it'll ask for index to be defined. Import index. And just like that, we already have all of the bare bones of our site kind of just there for us. So let's just kind of copy some things over. We're going to copy this data from here because we don't really have it with our dummy data. And I'm going to add data. I'm also going to copy this grouping right here and just paste it in. And this is why everything is so important to have in components. I can import a product item. Now if I reload the page on technology, we'll have this. But what also I'm going to do is I want to import our product types. And then what we're going to do is we want to figure out what this value is, because we didn't really tell it. So we're going to add curly braces to our server-side props. We're going to write params. We're going to write const category equal params. So this category and this category is this value right here. And we'll write type product types dot filter. We're going to filter it, looking for a slug that matches our category. And we're going to comma 0. We're going to replace this title right here with type dot name, but type doesn't exist, so we can just add it to the top here. If we reload the page, you'll see that technology now shows up. We can actually go back to our main page, and you'll see if we click on any of these, it shows up right there. One thing that we forgot to do was actually add a link to go back to the main page. And we'll go to the index, go to navbar, and just add a link around here. I'll first add a cursor pointer. Link href, just one single slash. And it's going to ask us to import it again. Cool, now I click there. See that there's a big difference. All right, let's click on technology, and let's kind of finish out this page. So I'll go to category, close that. Right on top of this, we're going to write div class name. We're going to remove that at this, $ curly braces, type dot background, and then let's add a h2, type dot name. You'll see that this shows up. Let's add some more styles right here. So text white, P of 24 to make it big, font semi-bold, text center, text 4XL, rounded 3XL. Cool. Now we can go back and you'll see if we click on any of these, we have all of our categories done. You can actually hit inspect, change it to a phone view, and it still looks kind of decent. Like I said, we're not looking for crazily detailed. This is meant to be a super basic introduction into Tailwind and what you can really do with it. On STEMpump, we definitely use it to be a lot more complex, like even this scrolling mechanism, we kind of use it with Tailwind. Everything is just pure Tailwind CSS. Especially even like this page, you're able to do a lot of cool things with Tailwind. So this is very much bare bones of what you can do with it. All right, so we finished this page. Now let's figure out what happens when we go here. We're gonna go into our files. We're gonna create a folder in the pages folder called product, and add an index called a file called ID with 2 square brackets here. Right. We're gonna import index. We're gonna import a thing called useState, and we're gonna and that's it. So we're gonna export default function product. Right, data, return index, and for now we're just gonna write data.title, and we're actually gonna set title to data.title. Reload the page and complain data doesn't exist. We're gonna export. Actually, you don't even need to do any of this. We can actually go back to category, copy all of this, paste it, remove this type code. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna for fetch. We're gonna add that. We're going to replace this with a ID. If I roll the page, now we have iPhone 9 showing up. So you can click on iPhone 10, Samsung Universe 9, whatever. So we'll go to iPhone 9 for now. Now, let's actually make our page have some substance. But first, I want to create one more local component. We're going to write function info block title description, or desk for short, return. It's going to be a div. It's going to have an h4 in it. That's going to be a title. It's going to have a paragraph, which is going to be a description. Class name, space y of 1, bg gray 100. It's going to have a 3XL rounding, padding of 6 on all sides. It's going to be flex. We're going to do flex column, so it kind of inverses it. We're going to do stretch to make sure everything stays the same size. And then we're going to do justify center, because this will now be the vertical, this will now be the horizontal in a way. Or H4, we'll give it a font semi-bold and a text of XL. You can't really see what we're doing, but it'll be a little bit clearer, and I want to get it out of the way now. And then a text gray of 500. Awesome. So inside this index, let's add some parentheses outside here. We're going to do a few things. First, we're going to create a div. It's going to be a flex items center justify between, and then another div. We're going to have an h2 with data.title, and then a paragraph tag with data.price. So need a dollar sign. We're going to space y of 2. This will be font semi-bold text 3XL. And then just a normal text gray 500. On the other side, we're gonna have a buy button. So we're gonna do class name, text white, background black, vertical padding of 4, horizontal padding of 16, font medium, rounded 2XL. When we hover, since it's black, we'll do an opacity of 75, and we'll have a transition of opacity as well. Since it's a button, we don't really need the cursor pointer, but you now see we have a buy now button. And now let's create a super simple image carousel that we can allow the user to click through images of the product. Let's create a div. We're going to add an image source data.images 0. We're going to give it a class name with full height of 96, rounded 3XL with a border. So right here, a space. I thought I already added a space Y4, space Y2 again. Now here, we're going to write div class name flex space x2 justify to the end, justify to the end, rounded full, items stretch, and then p-2. Don't really see anything. All right, data.images.map image comma index. Read this. That's a button, so button. All right, index plus 1. You know, now see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to use our use state. We're going to write const square bracket main image set main image equals use state of 0. Now in an array of items, we start at 0. So the first item will be labeled 0. So this is the first image, this is that. I can replace that 0 with main image, and 0 works. Main image is the variable, and set main image is how we change main image. It's kind of confusing, but it will make sense. On this button thing, on the button tag, we're going to write on click. We're going to add parentheses, arrow, equal sign arrow. We're going to write set main image to index. So now you see if I click on this, some of the images are duplicate, I'm sorry, but you'll see if I click on these numbers, now things change. Let's make this style as a result of it. So class name equals, we're going to do them like this. I'm going to write width of 6, height of 6, rounded full, flex, item center, justify center. I'll fold this out so you can actually read better. Text small, font medium, transition colors. Hit save. You'll see that things are a little bit more spaced out, but we don't know what's happening. We're going to use a $sign here. And we're going to write if main image is equal to index, so index is the current image index of the array. We're going to set background grade to 200. Else, let's just let people hover. They'll just be able to hover it, and there'll be a border. We'll add that. So now we have this styling, and you can see that if I hover, the color changes and click, and it'll show me the current image. You can go back, and you'll see like this one has different images, and it's all just kind of dynamic based on what you have. All right, in the home stretch, everybody. After this, we'll set a HR, hairline, and we'll write div class space y4. We're going to add a h3, class name, font, semi-bold, text XL. All right, more information. We're going to create a grid cols 2, gap 4. If it's a bigger screen, add a gap of 8. And we'll write info block, title equals description, value, what is it, description, data dot description. Cool, so you have that little block, and you see if I duplicate it 4 times. This last one will do brand, so from Apple. This one will be stock, this one will be rating. Inside this, we're going to change it. We're going to add these backticks. It's going to say $sign data.rating. Oh, we don't need, yeah. Out of 5 stars. You hit save, so 4.69 out of 5 stars. Here, it'll be data.stock remaining. And just like that, we have finished our site. Yeah, here's our site. So you can go back and you have our categories, we have our products, we have a bunch of small little interactions here and there, image switcher between various images and such. And yeah, in this camp we were able to kind of take the basics of Tailwind, Next.js, and React and kind of make a super basic site with some dummy data. I hope to do a lot more, refined and a lot more complex Tailwind camps in the future. If you want to see that, let us know via our support page or add a comment. Other than that, if you guys have any questions, support page, comment, whatever. Yeah, and have a good day or night or wherever you are.